Here, you can exercise your rights to freedom every day without leaving your home. We don't just say, we do. It's the Stain City way.
Good afternoon and welcome to Real Talk with me, Anele on SABC3. So to the chaotic and sometimes overwhelming world of South African politics comes a powerful young voice to help us make sense of it all. He's an academic activist and politics run through his veins. He was once upon a time the president of the University of Cape Town's SRC before moving to Ivy League, Oxford University. He holds an MPhil in international relations from the university, no stranger to hip-hop, having been a former member of rap group Entity with AKA and Tata Makena, which was formed while the three attended St. John's College and later releasing a hip-hop single, Mr. President. He has since published his debut book, Democracy and Delusion, 10 Myths in the South African Politics, along with his debut rap album with the same title. We welcome to the show, Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh. Sounds like I should call you Lord. Like that name, just it requires to say Lord Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh. Welcome to the show.
Why, thank you so much. I guess the rap throws off the whole Lord thing.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Unless, of course, that's your rap name, like Lord Sees.
I should have done that. I should have done that.
Right? And you dress like a Lord, like, you know, you have a horse somewhere and,
Well,
you know.
T.
Your mom's name, maiden name is Walsh, right?
That is right. That is
Now,
right.
For as long as I've known about you and known you, that's you've always used Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh.
Yeah.
From a kid, was that you, or did you like become woke along the line? You're like, you know what, I'm gonna use my mother's surname as well.
It was somewhere along the line, teenage years, and it was exactly for that reason. People always ask me, like, why do you use the Walsh? Like, why do you add this colonial surname to the end of your name? And it's really to recognize the role that my mother played in my upbringing. Often people see me through the prism of my father, of course, which is not something bad. I'm very proud of what he's achieved, but my mother is equal, if not more important in my upbringing. And so I thought that she should also be acknowledged in my name.
And now I know exactly what's going on. With everyone watching, they're like, who's his dad? Who's his dad? Who's his dad?
Yeah.
His dad is Dali Mpofu of the EFF. Now we're coming back. And he used to be our boss as well, actually. So now we're coming back. So both your parents, activists, right? So that's the environment you grew up in.
Yeah.
Did you always know that this is where then you would end up because that's where your parents are?
I think I realized later that politics was very much a part of our family, and that wasn't necessarily normal. You know, my parents literally, I am actually here literally because of politics.
Yes.
You know, my parents met in the struggle, and dinner table conversation, pretty much from young right till the present, it always revolves around politics. What's happening, what's going to happen, what should happen. And I suppose those kind of conversations that I took as normal aren't necessarily the first thing that people always speak about in their families. But my parents were very, very political and always tried to imbue me with a sense of political consciousness. And sometimes we agree now, sometimes we disagree now. But I think a commitment to South Africa and the country and making sure that the legacy of apartheid is destroyed has always been something important to people in my family.
What was your punishment like when you're growing up? Because
wow,
I'd imagine it's like, go and write an essay on why you should not be late for curfew.
Can I tell you this, right?
Yeah?
So my mom is a psychologist, and my father is an advocate, right? So I would get psychoanalyzed and then cross-examined after that. So it was like, so why were you at this time, at this place at this time? And then my mom would go, and how did that make you feel when you were there? So it was just like, yeah, you didn't know which way to turn. But wow, I can tell you one thing, my father's cross-examination, many people have ended up in those crosshairs, and I feel for them because he knows just how to make you feel comfortable. And if I'd done something wrong, like I remember I once went to go watch this movie with my older brother and it was rated 16 and I was like 13 or something.
Is this Medicine?
Oh. One of my brothers, I won't mention which one.
Because Melis is also very naughty, but carry on.
It was with me.
Yeah.
And so we came back and we knew that he'd found out. And when he came back, he sat down and he was in this great mood. And we were like, oh, we must have got away scot-free. He was like, how's everything? How was school? And just as we had become comfortable, he then turned and delivered the killer question. So why did you go and watch the movie that was rated 16 when you're 13? And you're just paralyzed. So every time I watch court cases now and I watch judges or people in the witness box squirming, I'm just like, I feel your pain.
You like sit there, like don't say that, oh, he's got you cornered.
I'm like, you're getting this for one day. I had it for years.
But there's something you said in your book. You said when you were in St. John's, and it was all around the corporal punishment, and you know, the one scenario is you were like, you know, the irony of a matriculant, a white boy, jacking with a cricket bat a grade 8 black student. For you, that entire picture didn't make sense. But, you know, profound statement to make, and I thoroughly enjoyed that chapter. But what stood out for me is you saying, I was lucky enough to avoid a hiding, you know, in those years. Were you the type of person who would just avoid getting into trouble? Because you do look squeaky clean now, but it wasn't always the case. Come on, you were a rapper, but were you always like constantly smart about your decisions? You're like, I'm just not gonna be in trouble.
I think I just got lucky in high school, particularly when I was in grade 8. You know, in those schools, it's just a question of like whoever ended up getting caught was the one who got in trouble. And so I think I just got lucky. But I was actually quite naughty in high school. And yeah, my parents had to sit me down a few times and just say, like, this is not what we expect. And only around, I think that was also part of the fact that the school was such an alienating experience. That often when you try to vent your frustrations as a teenager, you don't know how to do it. But sort of midway through high school, I started finding my feet and getting a lot more serious about studying and even politics and stuff like that. And so the ship kind of turned in the right direction somehow.
So when did we find rap? Hip hop?
We found rap. Oh man. I have so many
I'm not laughing, I promise.
I have so many stories to tell. But we found rap in grade 8. And I think it was also a product of, so a lot of people, as you mentioned, know that I went to St. John's, and they assume that, oh, so stuff must have been just easy all the way through.
We all think that when it's private schools, and because I mean, I've never been to a private school, but there is a certain level of judgment that comes from our end, be it from, you know, rural schools, township schools, and Model C schools, that the black kids in private schools had it easy. It wasn't. It was only up until after school where I was like, wow, guys, your pushback was as hard as ours. Yeah,
sure. Look, of course, you know, the economic advantage and all the privilege that comes with those schools are something that you can't deny. But there's also an interesting social dynamic where, you know, the school is 95% white and you're one of the first black students in the school, and so you feel very surrounded. And hip hop actually was a way to escape that. You know, it was a place where I heard confident black expression for the first time, and those of us who joined the group that later became Entity, it was the black students at St. John's at the time who were feeling quite socially isolated, and hip hop was this place to vent, this place to listen to confident black expression. And we then started rapping, learning how to rap, learning how to beatbox. And yeah, so it started very early on in the high school years.
I have an example of this early high school years.
Oh goodness.
Amandlaness that they found in hip hop. The group was called Entity, right? Look to see if you recognize any other people in there. Roll it. Yo, it's time to show pose. Situation is touch and go. You're trying to pull us down, but that's how we learn and we build and we grow. It's touch and go when I'm on my own, cause I'm standing in front of you, checking if you got the how, the why, the where, the who you feel should be standing in my shoes. But I'm facing a mirror, a Jason I'm fearing, and hearing the very things I fear are drawing nearer. Cause the one thing that's fragile is hate. I'm in a fragile place, in a fragile state of mind. Same education, we wouldn't have to bridge the gap between every nation. Keep stressing, never stressing the lesson, my guessing though, cause every flow, every... Look, I must just say that for the time that this was released, it was revolutionary. Like the video was great quality. Your guys' bars were amazing. We were like, who are these kids, right? And obviously you guys were excellent because that platform is what catapulted AKA to where he is today.
Absolutely.
So you guys are like Destiny's Child, and you, Michelle or Kelly.
I like to think of the Beatles, you know. Because then you had Paul McCartney and you had John Lennon.
Shake my head. Come here. Okay, there we go. I like that. Then you, John Lennon.
Okay,
No doubt about it.
Fair enough.
Because we're going to speak about your wife, but she's one big Yoko Ono in her own right.
She absolutely is.
Ah, all right. Currently completing a PhD in international relations at Oxford University, Sizwe has carved a name for himself as one of SA's thought leaders to be produced on this very soil. More with this fine gentleman when we return. And we're back. He has written on subjects of racism and corruption and has made popular videos about South African politics available on his site Long Talk to Freedom and his social media accounts. He's based in Johannesburg at the moment, a vocal supporter of free education in South Africa. He published a chapter on a possible free education model in the book Fees Must Fall. You didn't have And we're back. He has written on subjects of racism and corruption and has made popular videos about South African politics available on his site Long Talk to Freedom and his social media accounts. You can find those talks there as well. Currently based in Johannesburg, a vocal supporter of free education in South Africa, he published a chapter on a possible free education model in the book Fees Must Fall, Student Revolt, Decolonization and Governance. But we all remember him as the leader of the Rhodes Must Fall campaign in Oxford, calling for the removal of the statue of Cecil John Rhodes. You're watching Real Talk on SABC3. Today, I'm hanging out with one of South Africa's formidable intellectuals, Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, the son of Dali Mpofu, but that's not his claim to fame. So you go over there, ne?
Yeah.
And you're studying there, and then the next thing you're like, ain't like this statue here, it must fall.
Yeah.
Is the first thing people say to you not, but you're not from here, why don't you just study and then go back home?
Definitely. I mean, it was similar to the St. John's experience, but just to the power of 100.
Yeah.
You know, because Oxford is a place where you go and you see St. John's bosses, you know. And for a while you think, wow, this is amazing. I'm finally here. I'm amongst all this.
You've got the sweater, you've got the scarf.
You've got the tweed jacket. Everything's perfect.
Yeah.
And then one day it hits you and you're like, where did all this wealth and all of these beautiful buildings and all of this grandeur actually come from? And you realize that Oxford, beautiful as it is, was also the home of white supremacy. You know, I was actually looking at the old South African flag the other day once it was brought to our attention again. And I almost forgot that the British flag was part of it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that, because apartheid was also crafted in Britain. And in Britain, it was crafted at Oxford. That's where all the colonial administrators used to study. And so after being, you know, ensconced with the tradition of Oxford, you then realize, hold on a second, I have a responsibility here to also challenge this place. And I think as a young black person, you're told you're lucky, don't say anything, keep quiet, just go through it, get your degree.
You'll get deported, mind your own business, or they'll flank you.
Exactly. And look, I was attacked viciously by the British media. They told all kinds of lies on huge newspapers when we actually did challenge the university. But I think it's important.
Who's we? Because obviously you are at the forefront of this, but you bring a lot of people along with you. People, either students that you're studying with, maybe lecturers would back you, or maybe friends in England. Who's we? Yeah,
absolutely. I was part of a collective. I wouldn't say I was the person who started it. There were a number of us who started it. Students, some from the US, others from South Africa. Some lecturers joined us. And it was a group of us who really took this fight to Oxford and called for the statue to fall and be removed and recontextualized, but also the curriculum at Oxford. You know, you think this place is one of the best universities in the world, and you get there and it's like, you don't learn any African history. Like, it's 2017 and you're stuck in this colonial curriculum. So there's a lot of racism in places like Oxford, places like Cambridge, places
and
like
that's
Harvard.
institutionalized racism, the one that you can't, it's not like someone coming and calling you like, you know,
Right.
hey, shut up, you black person.
Right,
It's like these nuances, and you're like, ah, okay,
Yeah,
I see what's
yeah.
going on here.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then obviously that wasn't successful, right? The statue falling, because
Yeah.
also funders said that they'd pull their money out of the varsity if that statue had to fall.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I would say we started to win the debate inside Oxford. The big debating chamber in Oxford is the Oxford Union. And there was a big debate about whether the statue should go or not. And we actually won the debate. And a few days after we won the debate and started convincing people that you shouldn't have this white supremacist statue, donors called the college where the statue is, and they said, if you do anything with the statue, we're removing, it was hundreds of millions of pounds. And the debate died. But so we failed in getting the statue removed, but I mean, the conversation is still going on now.
Because that was
in
my
Oxford,
question for you, is that, okay, so that was, if you're looking at it face value, not digging into it, failure.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there are wins inside there, and what are the wins?
Sure. Well, I mean, the one thing is that the debate spread to different parts of the world. Obviously, South Africa was the epicenter of the debate for a long time with Rhodes Must Fall. Then it went to Oxford. And then it went to the US. So remember in Charlottesville with all of those statues, people were actually referencing the things we had said and the things that we had said in South Africa in that debate. And of course, many of those monuments got removed. And it's now in Australia. So I think the way the debate has spread has been truly global. But even at Oxford, you know, curriculums have changed. The undergraduate curriculum for all Oxford students now actually is a bit more representative. Oxford has started taking portraits down, putting more portraits of black people, black women specifically up, because the gender question is also really big at Oxford, one that needs to be uncovered. So I think we've sparked a conversation, and the cool thing about Oxford is you know that it will always be recorded in history. So
Because they like that as well. They like to write things down.
They do. So I think one day the statue will be removed. It might not be this decade, maybe not this century, but people will always remember the first time that it was challenged, and that record will be there.
Speaking of challenging things, fees must fall. Now, obviously you gave your more than 2 cents when that movement came about as well. But what I like more is the fact that you had been fighting the fees must fall thing from when you were SRC at UCT, and you were part of the group that blocked an increase from the fees. They wanted to make it 12%, and you and the people that you led made it 8%.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So even that, you were quite forward thinking. So what we saw and what we're currently experiencing right now in the country, and the movement that was like kind of magnified in the last 2.5 years, is something that you'd been fighting for the longest time. So when you lay asleep at night, how do these ideas come to you? Like, do you not find that you're constantly unhappy because you're constantly thinking about what is wrong and what needs to be fixed?
Look, I think this generation has really taken it to a whole different level. So my SRC was one of the first ones that tackled this issue, but the mass mobilization that we've seen over the last 3 years, I think, is totally in its own league.
Yeah.
Look, I think a lot, as my wife often tells me. But I think there's beauty in thinking. You know, there's beauty in reflection. There's beauty in being able to find places in your own mind that you can go and feel comfort in. And particularly when I was writing the book, I didn't despair, because the more I researched and the more I thought, the more I began to see that there actually are eminently feasible solutions. It's just that we're stuck in the exact same mindset, thinking the only thing we can do is what we've always been doing.
One of the things I liked in your, many solutions is,
Sure.
and you made such a good point, and I don't know, like, I'm not a stupid person, right? But I had not thought of that before I read your book. Is you say, fees must fall, people feel like we are saying that fees must fall, all of them now. But what's wrong with taking them from them being 15,000 to 5,000? Because that 10,000 rand alone could open so many doors for the very same people who cannot afford the fees. So like when you talk about those feasible options, who are you pitching them to? Are you just writing a book and hoping that, exclusive book stalls out? Or are you making calls to people and be like, guys, I've got solutions?
Yeah, look, I wanted to write the book to young South Africans who feel disappointed right now, who feel like we were given all these promises and we can watch all of this unraveling before our eyes and it getting worse by the day. And I wanted to actually say to people, yes, we have tremendous problems, and I outline them in the book, but there are actually solutions to these problems. So as you say, with the fees question, we sit and do nothing. And we just let fees skyrocket and skyrocket. And it's been 3 years. Students have done everything they can to put this on the agenda, but nothing has changed. Where, okay, maybe we can't do total free education tomorrow. That doesn't mean we can't start reducing the burden of fees over a period of 5 years. And particularly with tuition fees, which are at least half of the total picture, we could make a serious dent on the tuition fees that students are paying next year. And why don't we at least try to do something good as opposed to waiting for perfection, which actually just means we do the same thing for the whole time and the problem only gets exacerbated.
I like that. It's just waiting for perfection is something that we're going to touch on in the final segment when Vusi joins us, because I know he speaks about that as well. It's like, just start now, do something now, because if you wait until you're perfect, then you're never going to start, because ultimately to get to a perfect place, you need to have been doing it repeatedly for a amount of time. One crit for your book.
Sure.
Lord, my brain was overheating with the amount of big English words. I was just like, yo.
Oh, yeah?
And once again, not a stupid person, okay?
Sure.
But man, and I mean, you're a hip hopper. You know, you can write simplified for us.
True.
So could you release another version?
The simplified version.
The simplified version. You know, inspired by Anele and her lack of big words, and then just, you know, in rhymes, hip hop rhymes for us.
Well, that's the album. So.
There we
There
go.
you go. There you
Social activism meets hip-hop in the book Democracy and Delusion, which was launched recently and doing great in the bookstores. After the break, we chat Democracy and Delusion. Stay with us.
Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh. Let's go.
Combining the love of academics with his passion for hip-hop, an idea was birthed. Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh did what most thought was not possible, releasing a politically charged book with a rap album. His book, Democracy and Delusion, is not just a collection of essays, but a reference guide on how we can navigate our political landscape. It debunks the many myths which make up our many delusions of our democracy. He is in studio to chat all about it. Before we do that, I want to talk about your wife. You guys been married for 5 years, eh?
That's right. Actually, nearly 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old are you?
28.
28.
Yeah.
So you got married when you were 22?
Yeah.
Got in there early, eh?
Well, if you knew my wife, you would know. You would know why.
Sumaya's her name, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And what's fascinating for me is that you met on campus and you guys were against each other, right? In an election, you were running against each other.
This is some serious research. I feel like you called people or something. Like, wow.
Don't mess with this. Don't mess with this. Okay, this plan doesn't get here for itself. We know its mother. We know its father.
Okay, can we talk about the plan?
No, we can't. We're talking about you.
Yeah, we were. So we were running for the SRC.
Yeah.
And we were on rival political tickets.
That is so romantic right now.
Yeah.
And like when you guys were debating, were like sparks flying, like, oh, you keep quiet.
You know, when we were running to be elected, it actually wasn't particularly romantic.
Yeah.
It was after I started getting to know her better and better that suddenly I was like, oh my goodness, I'm in love with this person. This is a problem now. And then, you know, you try to deny it for a while. And ultimately I just sat her down and told her the truth. I was like, listen, there were no games. I was like, listen, this is how I feel. And I said, I think this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm not the kind of person who tries to pass those up. So, yeah. And then she was sitting there. My heart is out, like, on my lap.
Yeah.
And she looks up at me, and she's like, I have to go to the bathroom. And I'm like,
right now?
okay. So then she left me hanging there for like 5 minutes, and I was like, this is the worst thing I have ever done. Why did I do this? And then she comes back and she's like, yeah, no, I feel the same way. So I was like,
oh.
Yeah. And here we are.
And here you are.
Yeah.
It's very, because your parents as well, they also met at Vusi University, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So this just like meeting of minds. Like if you're not an academic in your circles, shame for you.
And my wife is doing her PhD as well, so yeah.
Oh, there's going to be 2 doctors in the house.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
morning, doctor.
Hello, doctor. How are you, doctor? Fine, thanks, doctor.
I'm good, doctor. And what is she doing her PhD in?
It's in education, and it's kind of between education and economics. So she did economics in her undergrad, and now she's interested in the way that internships affect employment opportunities going forward. Yeah. So.
Good heavens.
Yeah.
She's Muslim.
Yes.
You had to convert to Muslim.
Yes. Yes.
Did anybody in your family kind of like, what are you doing? You know, try to talk you out of it?
Well, my family is kind of like a gathering of the United Nations General Assembly.
Yes.
So no one in my family could exactly turn around and be like, I don't think you should do this multicultural thing. Because I would be like, oh, really?
Oh,
Really? Dad, mom, seriously?
Do you guys see you guys?
But then there's also Islam in my family. So one of my older brothers is Muslim. I actually have family in the Middle East. So Islam is also a strand in my family.
So it's what you always were, to be honest.
Well, I mean, I grew up Christian,
Yeah.
which is also a strand in my family. But I did a lot of reading about actually all religions, you know, and reading of Islam and Islamic texts. And I found that it resonated with a lot of the beliefs that I already had. And so, yeah, my family was quite easygoing about it. They were actually a bit more concerned about the marriage, which happened after I embraced Islam. And they were like, you're so young, what are you thinking? You know, don't you think you should wait a bit longer? And yeah, I managed to convince them.
So when you got married, then it wasn't done under the Xhosa traditional things, like did she eat utsiki and namncibisa?
Sadly not. Sadly
Okay.
not. Yeah. It was. I mean, so a lot of my Xhosa family came, and yeah, the ceremony was an Islamic.
I can
Islamic
imagine
ceremony.
like the real Xhosa ones. When Santwana usizwe benana
Oh,
Sizwe.
Kuthiwa ushadile uSizwe.
Uyatshata ilobola ibhatala isidima sethu kula family. They must have been like, at least pay lobola.
Oh yeah, no. In fact, there's a long-running debate about how we are going to do the traditional ceremony, which is still quite late. But yeah, we have to give her a name. Yeah, funeka simthi igama and
Bazambiza
yonke
noma
into.
Islam.
Noma scarf.
Noma scarf. Is there another book? I really feel like, yes, this book must be read.
Sure.
But are you planning, okay, wait, you were telling me you're writing your thesis. You don't have time for another book.
Yeah, so the big plan is to get my PhD done hopefully by the end of next year. But I do think I will write another book fairly soon. I mean, the political situation is only going to get more lit. And I think we need more young voices, not just mine, many others, to start speaking, writing, recording the way we feel about what's happening. So I can certainly see another book in the near future.
And a proper dive into politics?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I think it's still difficult to know exactly how as a young person. You know, politics is quite stale, and maybe just affecting hearts and minds with the book is actually a more effective way to do it than the formal space. But you never know.
And also, I suppose, you know, it's a lot like broadcasting, where people say they want to be in broadcasting, but they don't realize you can be a director, you can be the floor runner, you can be a script writer, you don't have to be the person speaking.
Exactly.
As with politics, you know, when say like, are you going to get into politics, everyone thinks you must be, you know, the leader of the party, whereas you could be, you know, the head of economics for the country, you could be so many things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So that's something you still pretty much toy around and play with.
Yeah, something I'm still thinking about exactly how. And of course, you know, things are up in the air in South Africa, and
Very much so.
we'll see how things pan out in the next 2 or 3 years.
And you don't think we're doomed, right? Because I'm asking your mind here, your learned and well-read mind. Like, we're not doomed. Things can turn around and be okay.
Well, we're kind of doomed, but we're kind of not. What I say in the book is our problems are not intractable. They can actually be solved fairly quickly if we do the right things. But the window is closing. We're not just going to get, all this time to do the right thing for forever. And I think maybe 3-4 years, we need to make sure that we reverse this tide. Because if we don't, we might be in a situation where it's going to take 50 years to get back to where we were in '96. And that I think will be a disaster. But it can be done. And I say in the book about how we can do different things. And we just have to have the bravery to try new things.
I trust the guy wearing the glasses, guys. The guy in the tweed jacket with the glasses, that's the guy he's going to trust. Listen, his book is not only one of the top 10 selling books, but has bagged the City Press Tafelberg Non-Fiction Award. Get yourself a copy of the book. If you don't like reading, then get yourself the album. The message is clear. Sizwe's going nowhere. He'll be back a little bit later. After the break, we catch up with Vusi Thembekwayo, what he's been up to, where he's traveled to, what projects he's currently working on. It's always a treat to have him here, so stay tuned.
Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh. Let's go. Let me talk to them. Check it. Sometimes I wonder if the struggle was worth it. Are people still fighting for service
Last time we had him on the show, we spoke about a lot of things, his childhood, entrepreneurship, and a wife that was about to give birth, but he was also in the process of recruiting 40 entrepreneurs to mentor. Vusi Thembekwayo, entrepreneur and venture capitalist, has now selected South Africa's top 40 entrepreneurs who will undergo an 18-month mentorship program and has been traveling across the globe as part of his global talks, the rock star of public speaking and the man who doesn't just talk business but lives it. He joins us now. We welcome back
Don't do it.
Oh, Vusi. Okay, it'll be our whole personal thing. Listen, I heard that you travel with your trainer.
Oh, goodness. Actually, I do.
You go overseas with your trainer?
Yeah, Mitando. He's 6'3", 6'4". He weighs 127 kilos. He's a tank.
No, because from the last time you were here to now, I can see it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. This is why you're not even wearing your jacket. I see you. I see through you.
It's not even like that.
It is like that. Because
now that you mentioned it. Now that you mentioned it.
He's out here like, yeah, I'm the rock. I want to talk about this program.
Right.
Because the first time I read about it, I was like, that is awesome.
Right.
Also because a lot of people are constantly trying to get you to work with them, to meet with them, to just listen to them. Yeah. So this was, okay, show me what you're good at and I will back it.
Yeah, look, I think it's important for us to become part of something positive. There's so much negative going on in our country. Yeah. It's important for us to just, in your own space, to frame an environment where you can become part of something positive. You know, and I'd spent 10, 15 years building a business, had done fairly well, had sold that business. And then I just kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, so I'm going to create a venture capital fund and invest in other businesses and make more money. But where am I becoming a force for good? And so we created the Top 40 program. It's a structured program, 18 months, there's an entire team behind it. And we're driving our other entrepreneurs to do more and do better. And it's difficult, it's really tough.
Yeah. But I mean, mentorship is such a tough thing, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks they want a mentor.
Yeah.
Until you actually ask them, okay, what is it that you want your mentor to do?
100%. And you know the hardest thing?
Yeah.
We're seeing it with a lot of the people who join the program, is they think, oh, Vusi is going to do the work.
No.
So they go, oh, I'm in the program now? It's done. I'm
Vusi,
like, no,
get
no,
me
no.
jobs.
I'm like, no. Exactly. So we hear entrepreneurs talk about, we want market access. So no, you're confused. My job is to get you to build the engine. I'm not going to build it for you. My job is to show you how you build it, and if you make mistakes, to help you along the path. But if I do it, then there's no skill transfer, right? In the same way, when I was coming up in the world of business, I had people with whom I could meet and connect who were going, maybe think of it this way, maybe try it that way. The reason I've built businesses is because I was doing it. No one was doing it for me.
But now that's 40 different businesses, though, Vusi.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the businesses I know that that are in there, they decorated my house.
Oh,
right?
wow.
They did, yeah.
Who's that?
Black Pearl.
Oh, Black Pearl.
Yes,
It's interesting they're doing our office.
Oh, okay, great. But I mean, that's interior decorating. What do you know about flowers?
So, great question.
I know, that's why I'm here.
So remember, a business is agnostic. It's just an economic enterprise. It's a force for commercial use. That's all a business is. The idea behind a business is simple. Deliver a product or service and charge for it more than it costs you to create it. That's all. Those fundamentals hold.
Never change.
They don't change. What does change is the industry we're in, and along those you need to make tunes around how do we access markets, how do we sell to customers, how do we price, yada yada. But those are technical things. But at the heart and at the front of the business, actually they're almost all the same, right? Especially where we focus, which are high growth businesses. So we were very specific, and I took a lot of heat from people on social media because they said, oh, once again, this is becoming exclusive. And I said, no, but there's got to be a watermark. You've got to get yourself to a point where I can have a conversation with you.
What was the entry to that?
R1 million. So we said,
year.
so we said R1 million annual turnover, which is not a lot of money. It's 80,000 Rand a month. It's 20,000 Rand a week. It's 4,000 Rand a day. It's 400 bucks an hour. Like, it's actually not a lot of money. If you think about it, if you say you're in business and you want to be taken seriously, because I don't know about you, as a black entrepreneur, the black part of my identity is very important to me.
Yes.
And I just feel like for so long, we've been recipients of charity that we need to reframe this thing. I don't want people's charity. That's why I don't do BE deals. Do you know how many they get invited to? Almost all the time. I don't do it. I hate the idea that someone builds something and now they must give me a portion of it and I must wait for 8 years until I can exercise these shares and they determine at which rate and how much dividends they're going to pay. I hate that rubbish. I can do it for myself.
But I read somewhere where you said that there aren't, you go into many boardrooms and what's missing are black investors.
Yes. Because remember, and again, this is a part of the conversation, right?
Okay.
Because remember, there isn't a class of, let me say this differently. The population of black professionals who've migrated from being black professionals to black business owners, exited businesses and created wealth to become investors is so small. It's tiny. You know, so I'll give you another, I get entrepreneurs who come to us and go, you know, I went to so-and-so, well-known black figure, and I asked him to mentor me, and he wouldn't do it. And I said, yeah, because he doesn't know how to.
Yeah, because he got funding and he got shares.
Thank you. He never built a business. Like just because he drives a Rolls Royce, this guy never built a business. He went and met with Pete Pompis.
Yeah.
Pete Pompis said, I'm going to give you 26% of my company.
Be the face.
He got a state funder to give him the money.
Yeah.
He attends a few board meetings. He wears a nice suit. He flies business class. He speaks big English. But don't ask him how to do a pricing model. Don't ask him how to calculate cost of capital. Don't ask him what is the interest charge. How do you generate IRR? He doesn't know. He's never done it.
And it's not to say he's not skilled in something. He possibly, passed a law degree.
100%.
Or he passed an engineering degree. But when it comes to being an entrepreneur and a businessman and growing something from grassroots levels, that person's
with the
not gonna help
greatest
you.
of respect to that class of people, almost all of them their commercial use is color. It's not this. So their commercial use is I am black, I am connected, I can walk into the room and speak the language that represents white interest. Why do you think, and this is a deep political point, but it's an honest one. Why do you think almost all the mines that continue to treat black laborers as sub-citizens have a substantial portion of black ownership? Like, let's just be logical. Go to those boards. You will find the black people on the boards. You will find them chair transformation committees.
They're small amount,
Yes.
and they're quiet.
And they have no power. See, nobody tells you they have no power. Because it's not like when they did the BEE deal, they put their own money in. Most BEE deals by their nature is notional funding, which means the company you're buying funds you to buy that stake. So the company actually determines at which point you get to own the stake.
We had someone, what's his name? The one that was laughing, Manyi. for the ANN7 deal, yes. Remember, they
That
gave him
notional
the
funding
money to, yeah.
Yeah, look, I mean, I come from that world, I understand it well. Suffices to say, if you sell me your car, and you say to me, but Vusi, I'll finance you to buy my car for you to do work. That means when I do the work, you determine how much that work is worth, which means you determine at which point I own the car. So I'm not now going to come to you and say, no, what are you talking about?
So basically, I now own my car and I own you.
Precisely.
That's all I just said here.
Precisely.
So when you say you've got the power within the realm of what you do, so now you've got these 40 entrepreneurs and you're mentoring them for the next 18 months. Is it like Survivor? Can somebody be voted off the island because
We started with 40. We've got 6 that have fallen off already. Because I'm not in the habit of taking prisoners. You know what? I'm only interested in creating the next black Bidvest.
Okay.
That's what I want. I want a black
Come
Bidvest.
through,
I want a black Discam. I want a black Clicks Group. I want a black Pick and Pay. I want a black ShopRite.
Okay.
That's what I'm building. But I also understand that most performance systems are by their nature pyramids. A lot of people start, a few people end at the top. But you got to start with a lot of people. And so it is in its nature, people are going to fall out of the process because we're not going to take prisoners.
So all 40 of them are black?
All of them.
And what if people say you're color obsessed? What's your answer to that?
We have a separate structure where we work with entrepreneurs of different skin color. But the 18-month intense process is because I know, a different way, I know what is in the psychology of the black entrepreneur.
Yes.
You see, most people talk about, and this is why a lot of state institutions have failed. And I say this with the greatest of respect, they've fallen short of their mandate. It's because they think to train the black entrepreneur, you need to teach him how to read an income statement. No. You need to start with his head first.
You need to teach him how to create, how to solve problems.
Exactly. And you need to teach him, for me, what made me different is I walked into the boardroom when I was running my consulting firm. I would walk in and consult, I would walk in and pitch against a Bain, a McKinsey, a BCG, and I believed I could do better than they did. I believed it.
Yeah.
So if you don't start with the psychology, where he walks in and he's a, hey, nambang fagil, yes. If we don't deal with that.
You're just thankful to be there.
Like,
yeah,
guys.
That's terrible. Where does that strength of mind come from? Because that's another thing that I was lambasted for not asking you the last time. They're like, you asked him everything, thank you, but you didn't ask him, like, where does, like, that, like, insatiable sense of self-belief come from?
Great question. Suffices to say it's been built to different potencies at different stages. So, when I told you this last time we were together, when I was growing up, my father was the sensei at the dojo. So my father put me under a lot of pressure to always be the best in the dojo because he was the sensei. The sensei's kid couldn't do worse than the other kids, right? And then when I kind of got to school and I was doing music, I was playing the violin, I was in the choir, I was under a lot of pressure from my parents to always be number one. If there's a single thing my parents raised us with, number 2 is not good enough. Number 2 was never good enough. So you were always fighting to be the best at what you did, certainly for me. And I grew into that to the point where I knew nothing else but to be number one. It became a part of my DNA. Do you get it?
But you can't always win. How do you deal with failure then?
Being number one is not about winning. Being number one is about knowing that even if you lose, when you come back, you will not lose again. That's what being number one is. I mean, think about it. If being number one was about winning all the time, Michael Jordan would have given up the first time he lost.
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, right? Being number one is going, oh, Ngshail, Sunzobon. Okay. Second round, nyaboy. That's what number one is. Number 2 goes, Ngshail, ne?
Let me go do something else.
That's number 2. Number 1 goes, oh, you think. So again, what makes part of how I operate, I obsess over the competition. Even in my industry today, there is nothing I don't know about the people with whom I'm competing. Both at a speaking level, global speaking level, and for my VC fund. There is nothing I don't know about my competition, what they're doing, where they're doing what, who's delivering what product, how they charge. I know everything. And I need to know everything because I'm going to beat you. That's my approach. I don't know how to do number 2 or average or ngcela sibone. It's just not in my DNA.
I'm going to beat you. I'm going to beat you like you stole something. Listen, time for a quick ad break. When we return, things are about to get lit. Caesar's coming back with that mind. Vusi's staying here with this mind. And Anele just bringing out the popcorn saying, woo, shame. Let's do this. Come back to us. You're watching Real Talk. If you've just joined us, I'm in conversation with Vusi Thembekwayo, and back on the couch is Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh, who's published the much talked about book, Democracy and Delusion. Sizwe, Vusi is releasing a book. He doesn't want to talk about it.
Oh, wow.
I was saying to him I was hoping to get an advanced copy or something like that. Nothing's forthcoming, so, you know, I'm just like hashtag Magna Carta.
Remember 12:15. Right.
Okay.
I have no words. Look, the book is a culmination of 8 years worth of work.
8 years of research.
8 years of research. I mean, it's a proper business book. It's not, you know, I've benchmarked against the business heavies when we wrote this book, and I was quite deliberate when we were doing the book throughout the process that I did not want to write another. This is my storybook, because I felt like, and there are great pieces of literature that have been done by Bageti for that, but I felt like there was a space, an environment where our voice was absent, where we did not talk about our conquest into this thing called business, and where we come from, and how we've manifested, and what we learned informs how we operate, and how we build great businesses in our own environment. So almost all the literature, all the research that exists in business literature is either American or British in the main. You don't really find anything from the continent, and you definitely don't find anything from people of color in the continent.
I think when it comes to business books, everyone's read Capitalist Nigger, and then they're like, that's it, I read all the business books that as a black person I need to read, and then I'm fine.
Sure, and even that is quasi-social, quasi-business, right?
Yeah.
It's like a hybrid of both. But if you write a straight-on Jim Collins type of business book, that takes a completely different approach.
You said something quite profound. I read it somewhere. You said your dad said to you, be careful of what you write because your words will always remain. Now, I want to throw that to you. When you were writing your book, what advice, hear this before you write this book. You know, what like warnings were you getting about publishing your thoughts?
Well, I think it was about the editing of the book, actually. It was about making sure that if
the spelling is right.
Well, you know, the thing about that is that it's actually a really hard thing to edit a book.
Yeah.
Because people think it's just, oh, you put spell check. It takes like 2 days to read a book properly. And then you have to read it like 10 or even 20 times to make sure it's unimpeachable. So a lot of people said, just make sure that it's edited right. And it's not as easy as you think it is to make sure that it's edited. And I think, that was it. Just put your best foot forward. Because if you're going to say controversial things, make sure someone can't be like, yeah, but you spelled that wrong. So like...
I have to tell you, it was my single most source of annoyance. Like, I just feel like we haven't contributed much by means of literature. We should celebrate each other. And then a person goes and writes something and skips a comma, and a whole thing breaks out and it trends. What, you've skipped a comma. Meanwhile, the person who's writing the tweet about you having skipped a comma never wrote an essay in school.
Absolutely.
I'm just like, come on.
To the defense of both parties, like, and we don't have to like not mention a name with Bonang and her book. No, we don't have to not mention a name, no, honestly. It's just
She
that...
did just mention the name.
No,
right?
guys, I'm not scared of anything, please. The message being passed in the book was of excellence and hard work, which is good because she does that. and she's a great example of that. But then you can't say I loathe incompetence and spell loathe wrong.
I'm with you completely.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm with you. So I wasn't referring to that example specifically, but now that you've mentioned
now that we're there.
not having endured
Yeah.
what I'm sure would have been the tortures of reading it, I have to say that I do think there is a watermark of acceptability.
Yes.
You know, there's
No,
got
they
to
were
be a
just being
point where you
harsh.
go, okay, yeah, I can see how he split his infinitives there. Okay, cool.
Okay, listen, we've got 2 minutes left. I don't know where the time went. Sizwe, quickly, what's the worst decision you ever made and how did you come back from it?
Wow. The worst decision I ever made was probably to stop playing soccer.
Yes, you were a Pirates player, weren't
Seriously.
you?
Yeah.
Is
yeah.
it?
Yeah. These knees will now belie how good I used to be. I promise. I promise. But it wasn't
What position did you play?
a striker.
Get out.
Number 9, G. Mess with your psyche.
The hip-hop is still there! The hip-hop is still there! What's the worst decision you ever made? How did you come back from it?
I bought a car I shouldn't have bought, and it took me forever to get out of that car. I know it's like a terrible
wow.
example, but it's
No,
the
but
only thing I can think of.
No, it's valid.
It was just like, I shouldn't have bought this thing. And it cost an arm and a leg, and then it just took me forever to get out of the car.
And obviously the car's not here any longer.
Alhamdulillah.
And now what are you? The process of when you're buying a car, now you just like, you check everything, including under
You know
the
what
car.
I do now?
Yeah.
I follow my gut. It doesn't matter what the world says, doesn't matter who says what. If inhliziyo yami ithandela, that's the
Yeah.
one I'm buying.
Follow your gut? Is that you as well?
Yeah. Follow your gut. I also follow my mind, as I'm sure.
Look, if I had a mind, your girls, I'd follow it a lot too.
Yeah, sure.
I can't believe you played soccer.
Soccer was my first
It's
love.
like, it's unbelievable. I don't trust you.
That was my first love. Yeah.
I know,
yeah.
he played like professional under-17 Pirates or something like that.
But this is why Pirates is losing.
Because they've lost men
Had I
like
carried
Hashtag
on,
blame
then
Oxford.
maybe. And the thing is, I come from a very deep Chiefs family, so it was a problem. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, dear.
Listen, guys, people have enjoyed you here. Thank you so much for coming back. We'll have you again when we want to chat, motivationals. And you, when you're president, please don't forget about the little people. And when you're the president advisor.
Yeah, well.
You've heard from South Africa's great minds, and they leave us with a lot to think about, reflect on, and possibly act on. Thank you so much to Vusi Thembekwayo as well as Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh for that insightful conversation. From me and the rest of the team, bye for now. We'll see you next time. SABC 3, Mondays to Fridays, 5 p.m. Ciao. And now you can act like
That's cheeky.